looped slideshow. On backgrounds of warm yellow, vivid sky blue, and soft red, details of this event are shared. Each new slide features a large white text box with black text and a bold black outline of a shape, a circle, triangle, or parallelogram somewhere in the frame. First slide, a white square in the centre of a yellow background. Text reads, "From Access to Inclusion, an Arts and Culture Summit." A black outline parallelogram sits at a slightly askew angle to the white text box. Text box on yellow background. Text reads, "Welcome to the official launch. Find out more by visiting adiarts.ie/summit and kennedy-center.org, with centre spelt CENTER. A black outline triangle on the right of the frame. Text box on red background. Text reads, "Meet our co-chairs, Betty Siegel, Director of VSA and Accessibility at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts." On the right, a photograph of Ms. Siegel. A woman in her 50s, Betty has black hair, shoulder length and curly, with a shock of grey hair from the right-hand side of her forehead. She has a clear porcelain complexion with dark brown eyes, framed by narrow red glasses and full dark eyebrows. In this image, she wears a blue shirt with a blue and green scarf draped around her neck, with long earrings and a chunky necklace. She is in a sitting room with a bookshelf behind her. Betty has a sonorous voice and an American accent. In the lower right-hand corner of the slide, a circle tucks in behind the text box. Text box on blue background. Text reads, "Pádraig Naughton, Executive Director of Arts and Disability Ireland." On the right, a photograph of Mr. Naughton. Pádraig is in his 40s, a man with fair complexion and dark hair greying throughout. His hair is cut neatly at the sides, with a slight fringe that covers his forehead. He wears broad, dark-rimmed glasses. In this image, he is smiling as he focuses on the camera. He wears a dark V-neck jumper with a shirt underneath, unbuttoned at the neck. Pádraig sits on a dark leather couch with pale velvet throw cushions on either side. He has a light voice with an Irish accent. In the lower right-hand corner, a triangle tucked in behind the text box. Text box on yellow background. Text reads, "Meet our presenters, Cymie Yeung, Manager of the Accessibility Office at West Kowloon Cultural District Authority." On the right, a photograph of Ms. Yeung. Cymie is in her 20s. She has long dark brown hair with a slight wave to it, and a dewy olive complexion with dark brown almond-shaped eyes. In this image, Cymie has a wry half-smile on her face, looking straight to camera. She wears a black long-sleeved top and has earphones in. She sits in a workspace with bookshelves behind her. Behind the photo, a large triangle pokes out. Text box on red background. Text reads, "Emmanuel von Schack, Director of Access Programmes at the National September 11 Memorial and Museum." On the right, a photograph of Mr. von Schack. Emmanuel is in his 40s. He has a pink complexion, a high forehead, and thin black curly hair that frames his head. His cheeks and chin are flecked with black and grey stubble. He has thick, dark eyebrows and large, dark brown eyes, with clear-framed glasses. In this image, Emmanuel is smiling broadly and wearing a crisp white shirt with a yellow and white tie. Behind the photo, a circle curls behind the text box. Text box on blue background. Text reads, "Access services available today. Irish Sign Language Interpretation, British Sign Language Interpretation, American Sign Language Interpretation," with the associated logo for sign language, 2 hands, both forming a circle by pressing thumb and forefinger together. Also, speech to text, brackets CA or T, with the associated logo, a rectangular speech bubble with 3 horizontal lines in it. A black triangle sits on the right of the frame, tucking in behind the corner of the white text box. Text box on yellow background. Text reads, Screen layout. This slide displays the layout of the event. In the centre are images of the 4 contributors, 2 by 2. From left to right, the upper 2 are Betty Siegel and Pádraig Naughton, with Emmanuel von Schack and Cymie Yeung as the lower 2. During this event, the images will be replaced by a live stream from each contributor. There are 4 more images in each corner of the slide. In the top left-hand corner is the logo from Access to Inclusion. In the top right-hand corner is an image of Ray Green, the ISL interpreter. Ray stands before a blue background with her long fair hair tied back in a ponytail. In this image, she wears a red turtleneck jumper. In the bottom right-hand corner is Sally Gillespie, the BSL interpreter. She too stands before a blue screen. Sally has long dark brown hair and fair skin and wears a black top and grey jacket in this image. The last image, in the bottom left-hand corner, is of Sharon Ploger, an ASL interpreter. Sharon sits before a black screen, wearing a black long-sleeve top. She has long dark brown hair and olive skin, and wears glasses. When Emmanuel von Schack makes his presentations, he uses ASL, and Sharon speaks his contribution. Below these images is a text box running the full width of the slide. The speech-to-text, CART, will be displayed here. A large triangle sits behind this screen layout on the right-hand side. Text box on red background. Text reads, For tech support, please email sheila@adiarts.ie, with Sheila spelt SILE, and support@eventcube.io. In the lower right-hand corner, a circle neatly tucked. Text box on blue background. Text reads, Audience Q&A. We want to hear from you. Please submit your questions throughout this session in the Q&A box underneath this video. The Submit Your Question field has been clearly labelled for screen readers. This question field is located directly beneath this video on the left-hand side. It is framed with a thick black border and contains a smaller text box with a faint border. Over the smaller text box it reads, Ask a question. Do you have a question? Submit it here. To the right of the question box is a red rectangular button with the word Submit in white text. Inside the question box, in faint grey text, are the words Write a question, which disappear as you insert your own query. On the right-hand side of this slide, a triangle is neatly tucked. Text box on yellow background. Text reads, Follow us and share, followed by details of hashtags and social media accounts, each typed as one word. Hashtag Access Summit. Facebook account, Arts and Disability Ireland. Twitter account, ADI Arts. And Instagram account, Arts and Disability Ireland. On the right-hand side of this slide, a triangle is superimposed. Text box on red background. Text reads, Register now for our 3-day symposium in March. Visit adiarts.ie/summit or email sheila@adiarts.ie with Sheila spelt SILE. A bold circle sits in the lower right-hand corner.
Hello, my name is Pádraig Naughton and I am Executive Director of Arts and Disability Ireland, and I'm coming to you from Dublin, and you're very welcome to the launch of From Access to Inclusion. And I am joined by Betty Siegel from the Kennedy Centre. Hello, Betty.
Hi, Pádraig. It's so lovely to be here today with you. As you heard, my name is Betty Siegel. I'm the Director of Accessibility and VSA at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts here in Washington, D.C. And it is such a delight to be here and welcome you all to the launch of this amazing summit. I am really delighted to be able to extend to you the greetings of the Kennedy Center, the Board of Trustees, and our President, Deborah Rutter, today. Thanks for having us, Pádraig.
You're very welcome, Betty. And in fact, without the Kennedy Center and our long partnership that seems to have gone on forever and ever now, but at least 4 years, going into 5, without you, we wouldn't have be able to make this summit happen. And I suppose from Arts and Disability Ireland's point of view, we're thrilled in many ways to be taking what was a Kennedy Center idea, the LEAD conference, and internationalizing it, which is really, really exciting. And like Betty, on behalf of the Arts and Disability Ireland board and our staff, we're delighted to welcome you to the launch, and also are also grateful for the support, as well as the Kennedy Centre, of the Arts Council of Ireland.
So let me start us off today with just a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to just take a few minutes here to tell you a little bit about the Kennedy Center and the LEAD network. So the Kennedy Center, for many of you who may not know, was established in 1964 as the nation's National Cultural Center and a living memorial to President John F. Kennedy. Today, the center is a vibrant cultural hub that reflects the cultural diversity of the United States, connects thousands of artists with millions of people each year, presents world-class national and international art, delivers powerful arts education opportunities, and embodies the ideals of equity, diversity, access, and inclusion, as well as civil, human, and disability rights, and most importantly, service to the community and to society, all ideals held by President Kennedy. And these ideals are vested in all of our activities. For the past 20 years, the center has committed to convening the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability, a professional network that explores practical methods for implementing accessibility in cultural environments, communicates information about arts and accessibility, and shares resources and knowledge among professionals in the field of accessibility. Now, several years ago, Pádraig mentioned in his welcome, it's been 4 or 5 years, I lose track. He and I were joking about taking the LEAD conference and the LEAD network out of the United States and going international. So over drinks, which is usually the best way to get anything done, we decided that it was time for us to have this partnership. Little did we know that today we would be here with you. And I find it incredibly powerful that this group has the opportunity to convene a global disability and cultural access movement. The focus of the In Conversation today and throughout the course of the summit is going to be for us to share about our work, share our hopes and aspirations, share our thoughts and ideas. And your thoughts and ideas are an incredibly important part of that process. So I'd like to pass this over to Pádraig to also extend his welcome.
Well, thank you, Betty. Just, I suppose, to start to explain a little bit about Arts and Disability Ireland. Arts and Disability Ireland is the national development and resource organisation for arts and disability in the Republic of Ireland. We say we champion the creativity of artists with disabilities. We promote inclusive experiences for audiences with disabilities. And all of that we do in partnership with the arts and cultural sector. So it's a pleasure to have you all watching our launch. I suppose with Arts and Disability Ireland and our relationship with the Kennedy Centre, as Betty says, it goes back a long way. I have been a huge admirer of the LEAD conference since I first went to LEAD in Boston in 2012, and it was a huge, exciting opportunity for me, where I met access professionals from not just across the United States, but across different parts of the world. And so Australia, the UK, Taiwan, Hong Kong. And it was a huge revelation to finally find a group of people who were focused on making arts content accessible to people with disabilities. And as a visually impaired person myself, wanting more access to content, I was really delighted to meet all these people. And I suppose, as Betty said, there was always an ambition that we would make LEAD more international, or even better still, either partner or steal the idea. We partnered rather than steal the idea. Here we are. So I suppose the important thing from Arts and Disability Ireland's perspective is we've been involved in access ourselves in Ireland for a number of years. Back in 2006, we started the first audio described performances, and in 2007 added captioned performances at the Abbey and later Dublin Theatre Festival. And since then we've started to provide those services around Ireland. So we've a very long commitment to access, but we were really interested in getting the conversation going and passing the ownership of what we were doing with access to the venues and the arts organisations who themselves can deliver and champion access in their own right. And so, as Betty said, the idea for the summit goes back to 2016, when Betty visited Ireland, and she said, you were quite good at doing conferences. Now, I don't know about that, but Betty told us we were. We thought she was brilliant at doing conferences, and her team. And she said, it'd be really interesting to do an international LEAD. And so I suppose that was the beginning of the seed of an idea. However, the original idea was to do a traditional type conference. So we were to have almost 300 people come to Dublin Castle for from Access to Inclusion, an Arts and Culture Summit in May of 2020. And of course, we all know that not just were our plans turned upside down, but the whole world's plans were turned upside down by COVID-19 and a global pandemic. And we're still not through it, but we made a conscious decision that rather than stop and wait until we could all meet in the one place and not have to social distance anymore, that we would go ahead and have an online gathering. Hence the 2021 From Access to Inclusion, an Arts and Culture Summit, which will be an entirely virtual affair. And I think what's really exciting about that, while it's very different to what we'd originally thought it was going to be, is that we're learning lots of new things, and we're, like everyone else in the arts and cultural sector, learning together how to move to the virtual environment and present a conference in this way. So with that, I think what we're going to do now is be joined on screen by Emmanuel von Schack and by Cymie Yeung, who are two of our keynote speakers for the summit. And myself and Betty are going to have an in-conversation with them. So just to, Emmanuel von Schack is Director of Access Programs for the National September 11th Memorial Museum in New York. And Cymie Yeung is the manager of the Accessibility Office at the West Kowloon Cultural District Authority in Hong Kong. So hello everyone, and it's great to be back together. I don't feel quite as nervous now.
So let me get us kicked off a little bit here by just reminding you all that what a pleasure and a thrill it is to be joined by Emmanuel and Cymie. We can find, and you can find, their biographies on the ADI website. Also, really importantly, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions of our presenters. So please, if you have a question for the end of the session, be sure to make use of the chat features and submit your questions below. Pádraig, I think you're going to ask Cymie and Emmanuel the first question.
So I'm going to start, Emmanuel, by asking you the question. Tell us about how you got to where you are and what you do today.
Thank you so much for inviting me to share my story. I'm really excited. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in New York City. I'd been going to cultural institutes since I was young. With my family, we'd go to museums, we'd go to theater. And I loved it, and I was very passionate about those types of cultural opportunities. But I never thought about a career in that. I had always thought that I wanted to be in civil rights for people with disabilities on an international level. Understanding international relations, politics, that was more my interest. When I was an undergrad student at NYU, I went to the Met Museum, and they had just started their ASL program that was led by a deaf person, and I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful. It was my first exposure to the Museum of Access through my language, and I really enjoyed that. And then once I finished at NYU, I did my internship at an NGO with the UN, my internship, but I also was still working with the Met because they wanted to increase the pool of deaf instructors that they had. And I thought, well, that would be fun. I really enjoy art. And as I continued with the internship, I started to see, I wasn't really happy with the political climate, the political culture. I wasn't making a direct impact the way I had envisioned that I would. At the Met Museum, going through all of their training, I realized, oh my gosh, I love art history. Plus, during that training, I learned more about the work of the museum and access at the museum. And I really liked that a lot. Plus, I felt, wow, I can make an impact with people immediately, people with disabilities. And I didn't realize there was an opportunity for a career in that with access, civil rights, museum work, cultural. This became an opportunity for career. So I dropped my career in political science. I was in the process of applying for a PhD program. I dropped that, and instead I got a master's degree in arts history. And when that completed, I joined the 9/11 Memorial Museum as a coordinator for access, and I still continue to present at the Met as well as at the Whitney Museum. And I work as a consultant for some of the other museums, cultural institutions in the New York area. And so that's how I got to where I am.
Great, thank you very much, Emmanuel. And Cymie, the same question to you. How have you got to where you are in your career and your work in West Kowloon?
I think it's a rather long story, but I'll try to keep it short. And I studied translations in the university, and I got an internship as a translator. And I worked a lot on translating menus of mobile phones and micro ovens at that time. And it was kind of boring for me. So I determined to find an interesting job after graduation. That's what my only wish at that time. But I didn't have a clear idea of what my career could be, except that I wanted to further explore on audio descriptions, as I got some idea of it from an elective course when I study translations, as my professors conduct a research on the impact of audio descriptions on translation students. But at that time, audio descriptions was not developed in Hong Kong yet. So I try to see if there are any opportunities around when I look for interesting jobs after graduation. And then I found us with the Disabled Association Hong Kong, ADAHK. I was very eager to be part of ADHK with the hope that I would have more opportunities in learning or practicing audio descriptions. So I try to send in applications for every positions that I'm qualified for, and finally connected with inclusion and accessibility since then. It was 2008, but accessibility in the arts was not widely developed in Hong Kong, and cultural venues are kind of old and not really equitable in terms of access. But at the same time, the government had an initiative and a plan to build cultural district. That is the West Kowloon Cultural District that I'm working for right now. And 2008 was also the time when the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, took effect in Hong Kong, so making it a perfect time to push for changes from a right-based perspective. So under this context, I involved in the advocacy work for an West Kowloon for All and joined an incredible team at ADAHK that focused on developing access services, including audio descriptions. So I got more engaged with my job as I make more friends with disabilities throughout the process and know more about the inequalities and challenges they face on daily basis. I hoped we could work to make a difference. And so when West Kowloon established an internal team to develop a district-wide strategy on accessibility in 2016, I joined it, and that's where I am today. So I think nothing was planned, but the opportunities just came in time. Yeah.
Okay, great. And I'll ask my next question to you, Cymie, before going back to Emmanuel, is give me an example of an access and inclusion program or service that you are currently working on. Just one example.
I'm currently developing a more systematic plan and resources for staff training online with different topics. Yes, I always prefer face-to-face training because I like interacting with others in person. But because of COVID-19, our trainings moved online, and I didn't trust this in the beginning, but I gradually find there are values like feel more comfortable asking questions in an anonymous or private message manner, and we could video record all the sessions for archive and future reference. So I took these opportunities to conduct surveys to understand my colleagues' interested topics and preferences of different training methods. Perhaps I could share more findings in the keynotes, but as a result, we established an internal accessibility video channels recently, and now we are preparing to tailor-make some more short videos addressing the different areas of work in collaborations with people with disabilities. So that's a part of my response towards my colleagues' feedbacks on those previous online trainings and one of the projects that I'm working on. Yeah.
Thank you. And Emmanuel, to bring you back in, can you give me one example of an access or inclusion program or service that you are currently working on?
Well, now because of COVID, of course, everything has changed. All of the programs and events that we are doing are now virtual. and online. So I have been working with different departments that have been responsible for those programs to make sure that they are accessible and inclusive. And at the same time, I'm developing policies and guidelines for internal use going forward for future programs to make sure that the quality is the same and the standards are the same, and that digital accessibility is a priority and we have a policy that guides to that.
Great. And Betty, I'm going to hand over to you now.
That's great. Thank you so much for those really insightful responses. I learn something new every day. I have to say that I have known Emmanuel and Cymie for a little bit now, and I learn something from them every time I meet them. So one of the delights of our work is that it is not boring. It is not routine. It is not static. I know that every day when I go to work, my email and my phone calls are going to surprise and delight me with something new and challenging. So my question to both of you, and perhaps we can start with Emmanuel, is what surprises you most about your work and your job?
That's really a hard question to answer because my job is full of surprises, like you said. It's never a dull moment. And that's what I love about this work. But what surprised me really is how much collaboration is truly required to be successful with accessibility and inclusion. I have to work with literally every department across our institute. I never imagined that I'd be working with the AV department, the audiovisual department, the collections department, the IT department, building and grounds department. For example, I do a lot of collaboration with them. And I realized that these are things that I didn't know. There are things that I didn't know what I needed to know, such as digital coding, how to read a building design and a blueprint, learning how to read and write contracts, all of these different specifics things that were necessary in order to complete my job. So to me, that was kind of a surprise and unexpected. And I didn't realize about the power of training. Because when I give training to people across the Institute, from the frontline staff all the way up to the president's office, and I train them, you can see a shift in their attitude. It's truly a 180-degree shift of being more supportive to that accessibility and inclusion and understanding how important it is. Now, I know training, of course, will have an impact, but it really has a significant impact. So that's surprising. And then, of course, there's always the everyday little unexpected new information, things that come up, questions people ask, new projects, new challenges. So I think that's it in a nutshell.
Cymie, I would ask you the same question. I know that your job is not static. I know that every day brings challenges. And I'm wondering what most surprises you about your work and your job.
Yes, actually quite similar to Emmanuel. And as I mentioned earlier, that I determined to find an interesting job, and I think I really did it. And there are lots of works going on in the district, as the district is still building and it changes every day. So I got opportunities to not just work with arts programs, but also many other professions in different areas like architects, digital platforms, people, and to work on websites and mobile apps, and also ticketing, and also different systems on new technology, etc. So I never get bored when I work, because you face new challenges and keep learning new things every day from different tasks and people. And I also learned a lot from seeking advices from the first-hand experiences from people with disabilities, and also other collaborators from different backgrounds and with different expertise. And also many mentors and peers working in the fields are always very generous to share their experiences, like many people in the LEAD network. But of course, there are also frustrations from time to time when we need to work with people who might have different priorities from us. But I still find my job very interesting every day after working for years. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm working, but just doing something I like with my friends. And I'm always grateful for having a job that I like and can collaborate with different people together to make our society a better place. Yeah.
Those are great answers. What I'm hearing both of you say is that you're engaged across your institutions and organizations, that you are, in essence, a jack of all trades, that you have to know and understand and be able to create and implement policy, law, that you're gathering a diversity of opinions and perspectives, and those are internal from your colleagues as well as external, because as we know, it is useless of us to do this work without our disability community's opinions and perspectives integral and integrated into it. I'm hearing that you're both incredibly flexible and adaptable, that you embrace the positives of technology and don't let the negatives of technology defeat you. I really loved what Emmanuel said about how it was so important for him to recognize value and leverage the power of training to shift cultural attitudes. I think that I'm also hearing that both of you are really invested in the idea of doing work that has impact, is sustainable, and leads to systematic changes, both internal to your organizations and external to your community. And I am really honored and proud to be a part of that kind of work as well. And that's what makes me excited to get out of bed and go to work every day. Now, my last question to you guys today, so feel free to expand, is what do you think are going to be the biggest challenges or the most important trends that are going to face the cultural community as we address access and inclusion? I'll give you just a second to think about that. What are the biggest challenges, some of the upcoming trends that face access and inclusion in the arts and culture today? Shall we flip this back to Emmanuel and then we'll go to Cymie?
That's a very interesting question, especially during the time period that we're in right now with COVID and the pandemic. There are two challenges regarding the cultural institutes and accessibility. You've got the Cultural Arts Institute. You've got places where they've closed temporarily or they've actually completely shut down. Those that are still open are either open virtually or with reduced hours. And many of our fundings have been reduced. And there have been some changes in priority. And unfortunately, accessibility has been put on the back burner as low priority. And part of that problem is perspective of accessibility features. People keep thinking that access is an afterthought, something that needs to be added after instead of being part of and being included in a project. For example, if you're creating a video, what is involved in creating this video? The first question is you need a camera, you need lighting, you need to have a rental space for it, you need to hire actors, you need software for editing. All of those are things that are necessary. And if you figure out you can't afford that, then you drop the project or you change the project. But if you add all of this and say, oh, I can afford it, I'll do the project. Oh, but I can't add in captioning or audio description or a sign interpreter because that costs too much. We'll just get rid of that accessibility stuff, but we'll continue with the project. That's a wrong way of thinking. The accessibility features should be included in the production cost when determining whether or not to do a project. If you include the audio description, the interpreting, the captioning, with the cost of editing software, the timing, the filming, the video, the lighting, the actors, then you make the determination whether or not a project can be completed and afforded. So it's the wrong approach to do it as an afterthought. And that really reflects the ongoing problems and trends. Even before COVID, accessibility was something that was added instead of being part of. Then for the disability community themselves, there's more challenge for access and to cultural institutions because some people are high risk. And with COVID, they already are having a challenge to visit a cultural institution. And then COVID is making it more of a challenge. The lack of outreach from those institutions to people with disabilities and trying to make them feel more inclusive. And unfortunately, they feel more marginalized and more isolated. Digital resources are not often accessible to them, as I had mentioned before, and they're stuck at home and they have no way to access the cultural institutions and their programs and their opportunities due to lack of accessibility. It's more limited for them and more limited for the way that the cultural institutions are choosing to prioritize accessibility. So I think those are some of the biggest challenges.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Those were some really big issues you raised as challenges and trends that we as a community need to be aware of and think about moving forward. Cymie, let me ask you the same question. What do you feel are the biggest challenges and future trends that are going to face access and inclusion work in the arts and culture today?
Yes, and I think it's quite similar to what Emmanuel said. And I think resources is always one of the challenges that everyone in the arts and cultural field face, especially at this extraordinary time. But apart from that, I think the biggest challenge for access and inclusion is always on people's attitude and mindsets towards the needs of having us and having access to us for people with disability. Is it something necessary for people with disabilities, or is it the basic right for people with disabilities? There are different views from different people because of different mindsets. If people don't treat inclusion and accessibility seriously, or not putting them as the core of every work they do or in every decisions they make from the bottom of their heart, it will affect the priorities of oneself, and accessibility will be easily missed in the process. So then it will become an afterthought. And we encounter many cases like this. So I think nurturing and empowering people to have awareness and proper mindset and attitudes to see access and inclusion from a social model, right-based, and justice perspective are extremely important. And for the upcoming trend, I actually think that we all experience a certain amount of isolations these years because of COVID-19, and this is something that people with disabilities have been experiencing all the for many years already. But I also see some opportunities as we started to have more online initiatives, and if we try to make all those initiatives accessible, we can actually reach out to more audience that they may not have any opportunities to go to theaters or to have access in the arts before, especially like for those people who might have severe disability or mobilities. But now if we have more accessible programs that is put up online, they can actually we can actually reach out to them through this sort of programs. So I see there are some challenges, but there are also some opportunities from the current situations. Recently, we also worked out something for the district as a consultation, but we need to explain some items for people with visual impairment. So it was very difficult for us to explain with audio descriptions without any tactile experience. But it's also very difficult if we couldn't gather people together to provide a tactile experience or a tactile model or that sort of stuff for them. So in the end, we find a vendor to help us to design some materials, and then we post to the individuals prior to our events, so that we could try to reach out to them, even though we are all working from home and we are all stay home, but they can still try to have some experience in terms of tactiles. I think this is not something not workable, but I think we need to think in advance and plan in advance, and not making all these stuff as an afterthought, so that we can take these challenges and turn it into another opportunities to reach out to more people.
That's really an exciting approach. I'm hearing from both of you that we've got interesting and new challenges in front of us. And we as accessibility people who've confronted all kinds of challenges in our past, both personally and professionally, have the capacity to address these conditions and move the needle forward in terms of inclusion and access. Cymie and Emmanuel, what I heard from you all is that we need to continue to be incredibly vigilant in guarding the rights of marginalized communities, because during a pandemic, our cultural institutions have to shift their priorities almost into a survival mode. And that makes the work that we do even more critical to what the core values are that the cultural arts institutions hold. You know, Cymie and Emmanuel, I both heard you really talk about the fact that the arts are not a luxury. They are a basic right, and that access needs to be at the core of our work. We need to nurture our relationships with our communities, and we need to empower our colleagues to really address these challenging circumstances with creative ideas and attitudes and approaches. And what I really loved, Cymie, and so I want to end this section on that thought, is that yes, there are definitely some really difficult challenges we are confronting, and that the disability community and the people that we are in service to are confronting. But there are also opportunities. We have the opportunity right now to take our capacity and expand it beyond the four walls of our organizations to reach even more people. And we need to take this as a challenge and turn things around for people with disabilities in our society, so that their voices and their perspectives are represented in all of our work and are honored and heard and seen. So right now, I think that we are ready to take some questions from you, our audience. What have been your thoughts and ideas or your questions for our presenters today?
So, Betty, I'm going to kickstart the questions, but I can't resist without having a shameless plug to say that if people want to, even from what they've heard so far, and before we take the questions, would like to book tickets for the summit, you can do that from adiarts.ie/summit. And we'll give more details again at the end, but I just couldn't resist and get that in. And I suppose let me start with this question that's come in, which is what Emmanuel and Cymie, and I'll start with you, Emmanuel, would be your top tip to access professionals or people coming into access starting off? And then Cymie, I'll pass it back to you.
I think the first thing is to gauge a sense of the environment of that organization to ensure what it's going to look like. Their understanding about access, what it looks like, who the allies truly are, who do you feel that you can partner with, because that's really key for accessibility. Partnership with the team. And then also to identify some of the easy fixes. What's easy to address? What's easy to resolve? To show people, see, this can be done. This is what accessibility looks like. And then build from there. And then work on the larger, more challenging projects. I think those are some of the important things to think about as getting into the accessibility field.
Okay, great. And Cymie, the same question to you. A top tip for somebody starting off in access?
Yes, I do agree with Emmanuel that partnership with the team, finding the right person that you can ally with is very, very important. And also, I think for everyone who work in the access, please do not afraid to ask questions if you don't know, and do not make any assumptions. And there are many people around that you can try to seek for their advice so that you can work out better, especially people with disabilities, because they know best of their needs. And also, when you feel frustrating or lonely, do reach out to other people working in the network. I'm sure everyone will be very happy to help with any questions. And most important, never underestimate your ability to make a difference, no matter what your position is in your own organizations. It not have sufficient for all of your initiatives, but you need to find the right person to talk to, and also do believe that we can always lead and influence others with your passions, not authority. I think that's one of the things that I found most useful. Yeah.
Okay, great. And Betty, I see another question coming in, and I can't help but pass it to you because one of the things you do at the LEAD conference is to remind us that we're all accessibility assets. So I want you to take this question and explore it with Emmanuel and with Cymie, which is around encouraging organizations to change when it comes to accessibility. Do you want to pick it up there?
Sure, that's one of probably the most difficult things an access coordinator or manager or passionate advocate can take on is how do we engage and empower other people to support this work and turn it into a priority. I jokingly say that our best access tool is a plate of fresh chocolate chip cookies delivered personally to someone's desk. That buys engagement and empowerment. I think that depending on what culture you're in, you're going to leverage different types of arguments. Are you going to leverage a legal approach? Can you leverage the approach around your organization's mission and vision? Can you leverage the fact that this is the right thing to do? I find that a very powerful argument here in the United States these days. What do you think, Cymie? Can you respond to that question as well?
Well, I think yes, engagement and empowerment is extremely important. we really buy in from senior management, from your peers, and actually staff from all levels. We can't just rely on one person. We need to empower everyone, not just the management level. So we need to make sure everyone to have the awareness, and constant reminders are really important. And actually, I also want to know how to work. And so this is also one of the questions that I ask my colleagues: how can I help you, and how can we facilitate more discussions? And that's one of the things that I did in the last few months after some internal sharing. And they give me very good feedback. And they offer me some insights on how can I actually remind them or encourage them to think more about access. So I think another important thing is to get people involved in the discussions. Apart from people with disabilities, also your peers within your own organizations. That's one of the things that I think we can help to keep the dialogue going within our own organizations and with our peers. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great response. Emmanuel, for you, what do you do to empower your colleagues and engage them and encourage them to prioritize this work?
I think a lot of what Cymie said, I completely agree with. It is important to have collaboration, not just with your colleagues or with the disabled community, but it's important to do it not alone and to do it with everyone as much as possible. Logistically, you can't do everything alone. It's impossible. You have to collaborate and you have to engage more accessibility opportunities. It's important also, I think the key word here is support. You don't want to feel like it's being forced upon your colleagues, say you have to do this, this, and this. Instead, you want to work together with them. What is the project that they're doing? What's important to them? And then emphasize how you can support that and help them to expand that project with accessibility. Sometimes you got to use the law also. It is a last resort, but sometimes, the law requires this and you have to do it. But that really should be your last resort. You want them to want to do it, not to do it because they are required to and they have to. And then if there's a success and they recognize the success, you then applaud them for them and acknowledge them for their success, and it makes the institution proud of the work that they've been doing and makes them feel as though they are part of this work and not just, oh, we're just here for the accessibility part, but actually they are a collaborator and a colleague and involved. Invite them to meetings. Listen to what they're doing, allow them to be more engaged. Sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes you have to learn how the work happens together. But I believe that those are some of the tips that I could offer for that. Oh, actually, add humor. That really helps also. A little bit of humor.
Can I ask a very quick question? Because the questions are coming in quite fast now, but I have one here which also came in, which is, can you give me both of you spoke about the disability community and engaging and learning from them. Can you, if you aren't too embarrassed, share one example where you went, I never thought of that, when a member of the disability community or a disability group approached you in terms of what you were doing around access? And Cymie, I'll go to you first.
Yes. Recently we are also because like for me I am not used to, I use mobile phone I without using the voice over functions, and so recently when I really need to the accessibility of mobile apps and also website and also accessible PDFs, I do need to ask a lot and also check with my friends who are blind and to teach me how to use the voiceover functions. Because I did once that I actually locked my phones and I couldn't unlock it. So I think this is one of the examples that is when I first started working on these areas of work, I really know nothing about it, and it's kind of difficult for me to deal with it. But now having more support and learn more from them, and we managed to use it quite smoothly now to do something before we really go to invite more people to have a more in-depth testing for.
And Emmanuel, for you, what have you picked up from, one example of an aha moment that you've had when you've engaged with the disability community or a disabled visitor, and something you've learned?
For me, the biggest aha moment was when I was making the museum experience accessible for low vision visitors. We had visual description for the tour with our guide. We had some tactile experiences, and I felt that was a great accessibility for them. However, there were some people that said, I don't like having visual description tour. I don't enjoy that type of thing. I was like, oh, okay, so that doesn't fit the mold for everyone. I asked what was their preference. And they said they'd rather have more of a conversational tour with some tactile things, but not just visual description of these are the artifacts, this is what's there. So that was really interesting for me. And it opened my mind to understand that there's such a range of types of accessible experiences. Sometimes
Okay.
two people within a disabled group, maybe they both have hearing loss, but they have a different range. One is completely deaf, one might be hard of hearing. And a deaf person has maybe a certain amount of hearing, or maybe they can sign, or maybe they can use speech reading, or maybe they have a little bit of low vision. But within each of these different types of visual loss and hearing loss, there's a range of preferences as well for that accessible experience. So I think that really was eye-opening to me.
Okay,
Pádraig,
that's
we
great.
have a very Pádraig. Wait, I'm interrupting. We have a very short time to go, and so I think
And I
we
was
only
about to
have
tell you,
time. You were going to tell me that? I'm telling you that.
yes.
All right, so we have about time for one more question, I think. And in the chat, we've got really two big questions that we're not going to be able to answer today. We're going to leave this session like a cliffhanger. You must come back in March to get the full response to these questions, but I'll put them out there, and maybe Cymie and Emmanuel, you can give us a very brief response to one of these questions. So we've got someone asking about their institution has the interest in disability and accessibility and inclusion initiatives, but they have a challenge with resources, staff, time, and of course, dollars. So what do we do, or how can we find more resources for our work? So that's one really big question. The second really big question is, what happens with the pandemic? How is this really going to impact our work? And are there any positive changes that we see coming out of what is happening globally? So can you pick one or the other of those two questions and give us a brief response? Emmanuel, do you want to go brief?
I think the biggest thing to recognize is you can achieve accessibility at a low cost. There is a range, of course. You just need to be creative. You need to partner with your colleagues and make your programs or your services inclusive. So you have one product that is accessible to many people as possible, and that will reduce the cost, as well as maybe you never thought about something that in the beginning of it being accessible, and it ended up being a lower cost and it was accessible. There's my short and sweet answer. Look forward to more coming up in the conference.
Cymie.
Yeah, for positive changes, like I mentioned a little bit in the discussions, in the conversations, that it is actually a good time for us to reach out to those people when we put a program. It's actually a good opportunities for us to reach out to those people who might not have opportunities to go to visitor or museums before. And apart from that, I also have discussions with my colleagues, and like perhaps it's also a good time for us to advocate for more relaxed initiatives at this time. It's all after when theaters or museum is going to reopen, because we actually found quite a number of similarities between the relaxed via the initiatives of relaxed performance or relaxed visiting hours with the social distancing measures. So I'm also looking for opportunities for further developing and explore on relaxed initiatives when we can be open theaters and also museums. Yeah.
Great. So thank you, everyone. We are out of time for attending. It's lovely to see so many great questions and to have had the opportunity to present today with Pádraig and Emmanuel and Cymie. Reminder, register for the symposium March 19th, 16th, and 23rd by visiting adiarts.ie/summit. And over to you, Pádraig.
Okay, and I just have some thank yous to do so that, as you say, Betty, we don't run over. So I want to thank our funders, the Kennedy Centre, the Arts Council, the British Council Ireland office, and the Creative Europe desk. And I also want to thank the team that have been behind this. So Will and Matt, the team at EventCube, Ray, Sally, and Sharon for interpreting, and Joanne for the speech to text for the live captions. Then the other people I want to thank is the ADI team, Amy Lawless and Ramona Mulcahy, and in particular Sheila Stewart, ADI's event manager, who coordinated today's launch. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to you for attending, and for now, I shall say goodbye, but please register and come to the summit. But goodbye from Hong Kong, New York, Washington, D.C., and Dublin.
On backgrounds of warm yellow, vivid sky blue and soft red, details of this event are shared. Each slide features a large white text box with black text and a bold black outline of a shape, a circle, a triangle, or a parallelogram, somewhere in the frame. First slide, a white square in the centre of a blue background. Text reads, "From Access to Inclusion, an Arts and Culture Summit." A black outline parallelogram sits at a slightly askew angle to the white text box. Text box on yellow background. Text reads, "Thank you. On behalf of Arts and Disability Ireland and the John F. Kennedy Centre for the Performing Arts Office of VSA and Accessibility, thank you for attending the official launch of From Access to Inclusion, an Arts and Culture Summit." A large triangle sits on the right-hand side. Text box on red background. Text reads, "Funders and Sponsors, the Kennedy Centre, Arts Council An Chomhairle Ealaíon, British Council, and Creative Europe Culture. The logo of each organisation is included. In the lower right-hand corner, a circle curls behind the white text box. Text box on blue background. Text reads, "Register now for our 3-day symposium in March. Visit adiarts.ie/summit or email sheila@adiarts.ie with Sheila spelt SILE. A large triangle is neatly tucked behind the lower right-hand corner. End of slides.